Hey,
Oh,
welcome to Kitchen Table Conversations with Kjessie.
and Andre.
And we're here with Multicultural Family Hub. And today we are tackling a rather large topic. I think of this as like the peak in our anxiety series. And that is money. We have been doing a series around parental anxiety. So we talked around anxiety about our kids' behavior, anxiety around schools and education, and we talked about anxiety around safety. And today we're talking about anxiety, specifically parental anxiety around money.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, it's a big one. I mean, Andre, I feel like has probably a better relationship with it. And mine is
Different.
more
Think of
still,
this different.
mine is more still in progress. Um, yeah, so why don't you kick us off?
Okay. So when we came to this point in this parent anxiety series, we were really thinking about, okay, what is the one aspect of parenting that touches on all the other ones? Whether it be education or school opportunities or safety or kids' behavior, all those things. And really, money for us was the one, specifically if you are living in a Western culture or North American Western culture, like money is the one you cannot get away from it. It is a part of being here. It is a part of the human experience in the West, is you are either interacting with it or you're around it or you have a lot of it or you don't have any of it or all of these different things,
All those are stories
all those
too.
stories. And there's for us, we want to have this conversation not on the ones and zeros or the x's and o's of
Yeah,
financial
we are
literacy,
not financial coaches at
but
all.
we want to talk about specifically the culture of money and how that culture of those stories really, really, really put a heavy blanket layer of an increased parental anxiety. And so that's where we want to come at it from.
Yeah, we came at it for me thinking about like one of the cultural stories is that money can pretty much fix anything, right? Like, if you are in a physically unsafe neighborhood, if you have enough money, you can move out of it, right? If your school is bad, right? We talked about that before. If your school is bad, I'm making air quotes, then you can, if you have enough money, then you can send your kids to a private school. If your kids are having challenging behavior, maybe it's who it's there around. And so then you can choose again to use your money, use your resources to buy them into a better system, into more extracurriculars. You can take that money and put them in sports, which is supposed to be character building, right? Like all these are stories that we have with our other parental anxieties that kind of our culture tells us that money can fix those things. So we have all these cultural stories around money and what it can do for you. And I think we also talk about money in terms of I am good with money or I am bad with money. There's a lot of morality attached to whether or not we have money or are good with it. And so I think a lot of the anxiety around money, at least for me, is about myself.
Mm.
Am I responsible? Am I doing a responsible thing by moving across the country and starting a business and not having a backup plan or a job? That's a lot about like my own worth in the questions about money. And someone might look at our bank account and be like, whoa, you guys are fine. And other people might be like, red flag, so irresponsible, right? And so my own personal parental anxiety around money comes from stories of not being enough, not having enough. Questions, the loops that come into my mind is, do I need to just set this thing aside and like put my nose to the grindstone and make sure that I work 3 jobs so that we have enough, so that my kids are taken care of. And I was listening to a parenting expert on a show the other day, and she was talking about determiners for kids and feeling safe, and kind of for physical and emotional health moving forward. And so much of it was just having a loving parent present.
Mm.
So my money story and my money anxiety is like taking me out to go get all the things so I feel better and I feel like I'm doing the right thing because I'm listening to the cultural story and all of the chatter versus um the determiner, which is being with my kids.
So when you say taking you out, you mean like when you are physically present with the kids, your body's there, but your mind
I think
is
taking me
somewhere
out in
else.
two different ways.
Okay.
One is that like I would go like look for a job.
Oh yeah.
I'll look for a job elsewhere to make sure I was working, two separate jobs outside of the home
Mm,
contributing, because then that would mean that there is like it would decrease my anxiety
okay.
around money. There's lots of air quoting today if you're listening on the podcast.
So there's
Um,
the physical concept of, one job is enough, one career is enough. It's like the side hustles.
right,
You had
or
on
like
three side hustles, and then at that point, I might feel like, okay, that's enough. So there's the physical part of it, and then there's you also the second part was like then there's the mental part of it,
right.
which you're physically somewhere, but
But right, I'm looping about worrying about money somewhere else, right? So
mm,
it's like I might physically be with my kids, but all of like the money anxiety has me looping in my head about what I should be doing, so I'm actually not present with them.
mm,
So I think that's like another layer to it.
mm, yeah, mm, that's really
I
interesting.
mean, do you have any anxiety around money ever? Parental, from a parent standpoint?
I think that so my relationship with money, I think the turning point for me is just coming to a relate, and this kind of happened before, you know, I became a parent because I feel like even especially when I look at my 20s, in some ways I was constantly choosing experiences or opportunities that didn't make financial sense. I think about like when I finished grad school, I went into the Peace Corps. Like that's not that was a complete move that was just based on a interest and a desire, and I wanted to try all of these things, and none of that decision was based on this will increase my earning potential or that this will somehow, it was not a financial strategy at all. And so I think because of that, I kind of wired my brain in some ways that and because of that, and because it's always worked out, after that, I've kind of wired, I think I came into parenting and I'd wired my brain to like to in the hierarchy of choosing that I'd wired my brain that experiences or opportunities was kind of the thing that I was most focused on. Um, and so with that being said, it's like I realized probably when our kids were really little. I would say when the twins were really little, so we have at that point we have three kids, we have two of them that are, under a year old, and I'm working hard. You are working hard, like we're working, working, working. But even in that, even in the working, even in the income coming in, I remember having a moment being like, even as I am getting paid more, the worry or the anxiety around money didn't diminish. So I remember just having this moment of going, wait a minute. So getting more or spending more hours or working longer is not reducing the anxiety, or it's not reducing the worry, or it's not reducing the conversations Chessie I would have about money every week, you know? And so what I came to realize, and then after I realized it, I kind of heard this backed up as I went on my own journey and through other people and through other coaches, was the reality was that for me, I realized worrying didn't change anything. Like, right? Like if, and I'm Chester and I were talking, if I have $10 in my bank account, which I hope no one out there is in that position, or if you've ever been in that position, or I hope you don't end up in that position. But if you do, if I have $10 in our bank account today, me worrying about it, me thinking about it, me worrying about it, actually, it's almost like the brain tells me that that's a good use of my energy and my time, but it actually isn't because it doesn't do anything. And I don't mean that it doesn't just do anything, meaning it doesn't change how much money is there. It's not an action. It's not a step forward. It's just a loop. And so if worrying about it doesn't do anything, then what I've realized is then there's no point in me worrying about it. There is a point in me going, only have $10 in my bank account. And then accepting that. And instead of worrying about it, then it says, okay, what is the next available action or next available step or the next creative step I can take to influence this? Now, those are two very different things. Worrying about it, I could worry about it for a week, a month, for a year, and it might not change, and it won't change anything in that account. Or I could say, okay, the worrying doesn't serve me. It's not should I worry? It's not, is worrying good or bad? It's just that it really doesn't do anything. The only thing that I found it does for me is it burns up my vital energy. Like it burns up my energy that would allow me to go, okay, I've only got $10. I remember I met that person at that event and they said this about this opportunity. I'm going to call them right now. Or I saw this post over here for this opportunity or this job. I'm going to apply right now. When I'm worrying, it sucks up all of that energy so that by the time it comes to take action, I'm not operating with a full tank, because I've used 50% of the fuel just worrying about it. So I think for me, when you ask, do I worry? I think I have thoughts that come up that are worrisome, but now I recognize like they won't do anything for me.
And
Yeah.
I think there's like two levels, or maybe worry isn't even the right word. So there's like worry, and I think about just this like revolving, just like a hamster wheel.
Mm.
Kind of that's what I see is like worry is like, are we gonna have enough? Is it gonna work out? What's gonna happen? There's like all those logistical
Mm.
questions, and I think that to me, so there's like that kind of worry, and then there's like the other piece of the story, which is the one that I had mentioned, which is like um whatever you're making that $10 in your bank account mean about
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
And I think there's like the logistical,
Yeah.
like physical, are we gonna lose our house? Like, how do I feed my kids? There's like that kind of a worry at like this base level. What if I don't have any retirement? Like all these like future projections. And then there's also shame.
Mhm.
Because I think also somehow in our culture, like not having money is somehow your fault. Or
Mm.
like that there is like
Means something negative about you as a human being.
right.
Yeah. And so
Somehow there's like some
yeah.
character flaw.
And I've thought about this a lot, and I don't have the exact answer, but I have a hypothesis. Like for some reason in my journey, I didn't pick that one up. I don't know. It's like that never got encoded into my neurological development that money meant something about who I was as a person or who other people were. And I think what happened is as it didn't get picked up, it never got taught to me very early, so it didn't become a part of my wiring. And then when I got into my 20s and things, I was traveling. So I was going to different cultures, I was going to different places. I've been to various and lived in various places in the US. I've lived in places that you would say economically there wasn't a lot of money. And then you and I lived in proximity to one of the wealthiest places in the United States of America. And like you meet people and you become friends. And so I also was able to see firsthand that the story of that wasn't true because I knew people that had lots, I knew people that had little, I knew people that had problems that had a lot of money, I knew people that lived a very, a great lifestyle that didn't have as much. And so I think I never got that consistent message over and over and over and over again. So that story never stuck to me. That like,
And I think that comes from outside of money.
yeah,
Because to me, that story is just like a consistent in my life that like translates to it's like in our culture, money is value. And so
mm,
in some ways, like my own value is like attached to money.
mm,
But also being given, so I also had, you and I had a similar 20s. I mean,
uh-huh,
we met when we were 25. I never worried or thought about money.
yeah,
Never
yeah.
until we had
And I
kids.
think this is when it comes to this
And
parent piece that's
and
key.
that's like the kicker is it for again, one of the reasons in starting Multicultural Family Hub, I feel like Andre and I, just the two of us, had tools, had, I should say, very limited tools that worked to support a relationship. But as soon as you add kids and the layers that your family has given you
Oh
and
my
culture
goodness.
has given you, and then you try to create this new thing,
Mm,
it really brings up a lot of
mm,
stuff.
mm.
Um, and
Well,
I also have to say, like the money story that I was given, which I think is, it's a very specific culture, is that money is bad. Um,
oh,
and I think
okay.
that
Like the
money,
morality of
the
it.
morality of
Oh,
money,
yeah.
I definitely came from like a money is the root of all evil. And so people somehow who have a lot of money are not good people.
Hmm.
And that wasn't like explicitly said, but that was like the overculture,
Mm,
was that somehow money was a bad thing.
mm,
And that if you have money, like you need to give it away.
mm,
And like that's what makes you a good person, is giving it all away.
mm,
Um, so that's like a, I feel like that's a really specific money story, because I think the arcing American culture
mm.
is like money, like more is better, and that status. I don't know, would you
Well, it's
agree?
almost two things at once. I think there's a part of our American culture that's like money, more money is better, or people with money is better. But then at the same time, within that lives this other part of the culture that's like, more money is bad, and people with a lot of money are bad, and people with or the opposite, people that don't have a lot of money are bad. Like there's like this weird of like
It's like you
you're
can't
like, wait a
pick.
minute, so which one? And I think this comes to the point of conversation is like these are stories, these are cultural stories, and they're cultural stories. And then I think the other part we have to add to this, and Chessie just touched on it, we have to start to recognize that, for example, I'll use myself for example. The my nervous system at 20, in my 20s at a bus stop in the middle of nowhere in Mozambique with a backpack and a surfboard with like a couple dollars in my pocket, heading on a bus, hoping it gets to where I'm going,
We were
and,
fine.
and sleeping. That was the nerve. I was sleeping with a goat on top of the taxi that called me, and I mean music bumping, people whatever, completely sleeping. That nervous system changes, or at least mine did, when you become a parent. All of a sudden, I mean, think about all the things in that situation where one could be worried about.
It's true.
That probably might be some practical things we're at, and I'm sleeping, being like, they'll let me know when I get there.
Yeah.
And then think about you become a parent. And all of a sudden, it goes from one extreme to
I think
being
like
able to,
I felt like mine, I am like just mine just like took the dial and just like
yes, that's
just
the
cranked it all the way
it
up.
cranks it all the way up. No one prepares you for it. No one tells you that this is a normal part. No one even explains to you that the fact that you're becoming a parent, whether you're mom or dad or whatever way are parenting, that it has a physiological impact on your brain. There's different parts of your brain that are now receiving blood and oxygen that did not before. And then no one explains to you that not only are you going to maybe be worried about the things that are practical, that are right in front of you, but then because you're a parent and your mind is thinking about all the possibilities out there, that those things are also going to cause you anxiety or nervousness or worry. So you take that. So you take a dysregulated nervous system. And I think most parents, as we come into parenting, unless we have some support, unless we have some tools, unless we have someone guiding us, we kind of enter into it, and then we have this nervous system that essentially has got really jacked up. And so you take that, and then you, oh, on top of that, now let's add in these conflicting stories about money. It's good, it's bad, good people have it, bad people are the ones that
Don't
have
have too
it.
much.
There's no money, and there's endless amounts of money. On and on and on and on and on. And so I think what happens is we kind of hit to a point where, first of all, regulating your nervous system as a parent is in my opinion one of the first steps. Because if not, anytime someone even says something like money, your brain and body are gonna fire off. Like, it doesn't matter if it's good news or bad news, it's constantly getting like jacked up. Like everything's good, everything's bad. Everything's good, everything's bad. And that's kind of the money state we live in. Like, we got a lot of money, we don't have any money, everything's gonna go bad. And we're constantly as parents living in that. And but so then there's balancing our nervous system, which is a different podcast, but still good. But then there's the part of recognizing the story of money.
I think
And that we each have a story about it, we're given a story about it, and then going back to questioning if that's even true. Because once you start to question the story, then you can say, okay, if that story is not 100% true, then you can say, okay, when I lean into that story, when I accept that story is true, how does that impact me? Well, it makes me anxious, it makes me worried, it creates stress and tension in my relationship. I'm not present with my kids, on and on and on and on. So then you can go, okay, if that story about money isn't true and it doesn't serve me, then what is a story about money that I can create that does serve me? Now, this is where, for me, this is where the strategy is really powerful because they are both stories. The story that there isn't enough money is just a story. But that one can make, I said, make you anxious, make you nervous, cause you stress. The story that there is a limited amount of money and abundance is also a story. I can't prove either one of these to you, but one of them allows me to put down the worry, put down the anxiety, and then start to take action or steps from a place of creativity. Because if I'm not worried about it, then I'm able to pick up that phone and say, hey, I'm going to connect with that person I met. Or I'm going to actually, I am interested in that job. I'm actually going to reach out and apply for it. I can't, for me, I'm not able to do those creative actions if I'm worried. Because when your head's down, you're trying to figure it out, you're getting angry. And even if you do take action, you're taking action from that state of mind, and that is going to show up in whatever action you take. So then who's gonna, the opportunities are gonna kind of repel because it's like, well, you're obviously not in a good place. And so I think, Kjessie and I were talking, and I don't think that we have an option. We are going to have some relationship with money. I don't think it's an opt out in Western culture. You're going to have a relationship with money, but I do think we get to choose the story that influences the relationship we have with money. But I think the first step is our nervous system, and then also, like you said, recognizing what's our family story with money. We were saying when you go see a newborn baby, they don't have a money story yet.
no.
They're not like they, you go see a baby, that's recently born. They're not like, what's my IRA, or like, what's my 401k look like? Those stories get taught to us. I think, yes, there's overculture story about money, but probably the most powerful story about money comes typically from our families or the communities we were raised in. Those are the ones I think stick into the nervous system and stick in that brain development. Yeah. And then so now we're parents. So then what do? We have our stories.
I think just one of the most helpful pieces for me was uncovering the story and being like, oh,
What was that? Yeah, what did that process like for you?
I think recognizing that I believed that in some ways money was bad and having money was bad.
Mm.
And just picking that up and being like, wow, do I believe that's true? I read a book called The Soul of Money by Lynn Twist that just was so beautiful. And I think it takes a lot of the morality out of it. And looking at money as a tool and as energy. And we did a previous podcast a little bit about that and how we have talked about money within our family and with our kids. And in this moment for me, that feels more high anxiety around money, coming back to the story that I want to tell to my kids about it, is that it comes and it goes. And that if it's like water, and then if we try to hold on to it, it just slips through our fingers. But if we let it flow in and flow out, then that energy will be a tool to be used, hopefully as a force for good as we move through the world.
Mhm.
And so for me, the first step was examining like what had I been told and what did I believe about it? And then what do I want to believe about it? And also, how do I want my kids? Because I feel like for me, so much of the change that I want to make is believing that kids hear some of what we say, but see all of what we do. And for me, having a belief that there is enough and that there is plenty. And so being able to move through the world with a generous spirit is important for me to model
Mhm.
them. And so it also helps me get out of the loop in my head because I'm like, that's not the story that I want to have about money.
Mhm.
Um, and they will ask us regularly if we're rich.
Yeah.
um, because they've been in different situations too, and kids are seeing them and people are trying to figure them out. And our response, our chosen response, is that we are wealthy. We have love, we have more than enough to share, right? And so if you look at our bank account, you might be like, that is craziness, right? But I do believe that we can make the number in the bank account mean whatever we want it to mean.
Mm.
And so my consistent work is around parental anxiety with money, is that the number in the bank account doesn't mean anything about me as a parent, and that like I am the most important thing for my kids.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting. Do you think that, how do I say this? Do you think, so culturally speaking, do you think the anxiety level, depending on the role, depending on how the role, how the family is structured, do you think there's something about being a Caucasian North American woman that you're coming to the money story with strong inherited cultural stories that go back, a long, long, long time ago, that are rooted in, being a woman, but also rooted being a woman in within this context, this place. And
I think there's things that tie in that are inherent within motherhood
okay.
and our culture because um there's like this, I mean, culturally wise, how much you can bring in in terms of money
Uh,
determines some level of value.
mm, yeah.
And so when the we made choices for when we started a family that
Yeah.
I stepped back out of the earning role where we were typically right alongside one another,
Yeah.
stepped back to say, hey, I'm going to do more part-time work, and primarily my job is to take care of children. Also, that was not a role that I had necessarily explored in my own mind and heart.
And we had really, really explored that in terms of the relationship and how that would impact our role with money.
Oh
Yeah,
man.
we didn't know, once again, that money ties into all these other
No, it
nooks and
has so many
crannies.
stories because if you're not earning, then you're not worthy in some ways in our culture. And there is no monetary value placed on motherhood
Mm,
whatsoever. There's not even a tax break.
mm,
I mean, there is no cultural valuement
Mm,
of caregiving work. And I believe it is one of, I mean, it shapes our entire culture and our children in the next generation
yeah.
is how we choose to caregive. And part of why we are doing Multicultural Family Hub and what I and as a mother, man, that like messes with your identity.
Mm,
Personally, for me, it did, was that there was no cultural value apart. Like when you become a mother and are not bringing in monetary
mm,
resources, oh, it felt so bad. It felt
mm,
so bad. And I felt like on a professional level, people no longer took me seriously. I felt so much I still feel fear about like entering the workforce because we've cobbled together all these different ways of being. And more recently became an entrepreneur, and that really I felt like gave my own sense of worth and confidence a
yeah.
boost. Um, but still, I think it's so hard to tease out value in like value and money in the experience of being a mother and that like with the parental anxiety of like how I want to show up as a mom and like the examples I was given and the stories that I was given um about like what a good mother is and then tease that against the backdrop of making
Mm,
money. So yeah, I think those are the stories are so powerful and um for me like being a good mother because the model I had been given, my mom chose to be primarily in the home with us our entire lives. And so for me, the model of a good mother was that you stay home, you bake the cookies, you do the housework, like you provide really healthy meals, you keep the house on an incredibly tight budget, and you keep things going on this like home level. And because that was the story that I had at a deep level, even though I like really hate housework with my whole soul, I tried to continue to do those
mm,
things. And it it just there was so much grading. I felt like just like within myself, not examining the way that all these things play together and also the cultural overtone, which like I think for women and mothers, we are at like this turning point where it's time to write a new story because the tools that we've been given are just like crushing women,
mm, mm.
specifically mothers, and just we are grinding women. And I know this is not necessarily about money, but it is about money.
Well, that's like actually my next question was gonna be like, I mean, when we talk about money, like when two, let's say, someone's listening to this or couples are listening to this, when they talk about money, I mean, how often are we actually talking about the ones and zeros versus when we talk about money, we're actually talking about, we say money, but what
Yeah,
we're really talking about is value. Like I think it's probably like
yeah,
less than 10% of the time we're talking about the black and the red, the concrete, the non-emotional. And the other however much percent of the time, it's like we might be talking about saying the word money, but what we're talking about is how I don't feel valued or
right.
how I don't feel like I have the freedom to choose the things that bring me joy, or on and on and on and on. Would you say
Oh,
that?
the majority of the time. I think when we talk about money, we are talking about emotions.
There you
We're
go.
talking
Yeah.
about feelings because it's like, does $100,000 in your bank account make you feel safe? Does $50 in your bank account make you feel safe? Like the numbers don't track at all because it's going to be a different answer for everyone. And
Yeah.
even with parental anxiety around money, like our numbers are all going to be different because for some people making sure that your 401k is stacked every month, that's safety and
That
that's
feels safe.
security.
Yeah.
And even if you have to live really tight all the time, if you're planning for the
Uh,
future, that feels good.
for the other person, it's once you own your home,
Correct,
then you're safe.
yes. Yeah.
And then someone else may be like, I have no interest in a home, but I want to really have a great rental situation so I can travel.
Right, yeah, or like, oh man, I feel like such a bad parent. Like, I haven't taken my kids to visit their family in India yet. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like such a bad parent. Like, I should have bought
Yeah.
myself as well as all my extended relatives houses by now. Like,
Mm-mm.
I am 42 and I'm supposed to be a millionaire.
Mm.
Like, all of these, like, really, I just feel like there's like lots of intense stories about like how much our children need, and like I'm thinking about in terms of parental anxiety, and also or the story that like I want to be in a better financial situation. I think this is like one of the American stories is like I'm trying to give my kids more than what I had. Is that like generational building, and that deep feeling of failure if you're like, wow, I'm behind where my parents were. Like somehow that's like the antithesis of the American dream, is that like you are not giving your kids more than the generation before you had.
Yeah, and so this is really interesting. When you were talking, this is what popped up for me is when we're actually talking about money, and I mean the actual money, the ones, the zeros, when we're actually talking about that, there really isn't any emotion because it's so concrete. Like it's like, I've got 50, I've got 50 number, or I've got 50,000 number. I can't argue that. I can't, there's no like, I'm happy, I'm sad. It's there, it's not. But I think then there's another thing that we call money. But what we actually are talking about are our feelings.
Yeah.
And that's the anxiety one. For example, the other one, that I can look at and go, yep, that's exactly how much, that's what's there. That's what's not there. It just is. It's a circumstance. It's completely concrete.
Yeah.
But the other thing that we call money, which really are our emotions,
Yeah.
which we live in a culture that says I can't talk about those emotions, so I gotta say, hey, can we sit down and have a conversation about money? I can't say, hey, can we sit down and have a conversation about how, I don't feel valued as a human being because of X, Y, Z. I can't say that. So I think,
Or
can we,
maybe you don't even like
or
you
you
don't
don't
even
even know.
understand. And
Yeah,
that
yeah.
was like for me in some of those like really tumultuous years, just being like, I am so like frustrated because you just having all these feelings, but not knowing the source of it.
And I remember there was a time period in our relationship where and here's the thing is I can't even say it concrete where money was low because when I look back on it, it's like maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. Who knows? Maybe it was right where it's supposed to be. But if you had a feeling, well, I'm not gonna say, if you had a feeling about money that made you worried and anxious, you would mention it to me. And then my response to that would be like, okay, I'm gonna go get some more. Like it was like you're hunting or something. Like I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna go get another game and bring it back in. Which you and I talk about that, but then there's the other side of that is like, okay, well now you're gone. And there's a lot because what we really weren't talking about was money. In my mind, I thought we were talking about, oh, we need more of this concrete thing. But what we were really, what the conversation that was actually going on was more value, more recognition, more freedom, more support, but because it was wrapped in money, depending on how you're oriented and the way I'm oriented, was like, okay, well then the way to solve this thing is to go get more of this other thing. But that wasn't what was missing.
Yeah.
But once again, I didn't have the language to hear through let's call it I couldn't see through the mask of the word money. And then you were at a place where you weren't even able to articulate.
I was scared.
Yeah, yeah, scared to articulate. We could talk about that, even like the fear of saying, here's what I really need. And so it's
And I don't even think that I could articulate it. I was scared to like express my emotions. I was scared to say I am feeling terrible and like this isn't working.
Mhm.
Because I don't I also like I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings.
Mhm.
I like having those hard conversations meant you being uncomfortable.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so like I never wanted to make anyone uncomfortable but myself.
yeah,
That does not work well.
yeah. So interesting. So in a lot of ways, I think what we're saying, and you guys might have to explore, you folks might have to explore this in your own life, in your relationship. In some ways, by 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 not talking about the emotions that we're actually feeling that are creating the tension and anxiety, and by calling it money,
Yeah.
we end up creating tension, stress, and anxiety. Because when we're just talking about money, when we're just talking about ones and twos, that's very concrete. It's right
And
there.
those numbers don't mean
And I
anything
mean,
about you.
and they
But
go up. And I have worked with people that have had literally millions of dollars one year and have had the next year or 2 years that are down to 30,000. And they'll tell you this. They will say, yeah, I made 1 million and I didn't. And I lost. So once again, ups and downs, highs and lows. But like Chad said, that number doesn't mean anything. But there is a story you can tell yourself about that number.
and security, like we um one of the things right now that is a struggle is in our culture, security is a job. But we all know, and I'm sure you've all experienced, that jobs go away and you can lose your job. You can get sick and or you could, if you're working in a physical environment, you can break your leg and then you no longer have access to that job,
Or a natural
right?
tornado, fires, hurricanes,
You have
they
like
come through and
personal experience with that.
yeah, in 15 minutes, the physical place you work is gone, or a hurricane comes through, and in a a very short time, your city or your town, it's flooded. That house, like even the place that you work, that job, it's gone, not because you didn't do anything right, not because people weren't work hard enough. It's like, so even that is a story of security. Um, and so I think kind of wrapping this up, I think one of the things that we can do as parents, as individuals, as families, is really start to say, okay, when we think about money, let's actually be brave enough to talk about the emotions that are actually at the root of the anxiety and stress, and not mask them that we're talking about ones and zeros.
Yeah, and in your
Yeah.
own, I think in your own journey with anxiety around money, asking that question, like, what story was I given around it? What does money mean? What did it mean if I had it? And starting to dig up those layers, and then also moving forward, choosing. Like the phrase is, there's enough. That is a phrase that I have to tell myself multiple times a day, that there is enough. And I believe that there's enough, and that
Well,
I am like that there will be enough for our children, and that it is going to work out, because the opposite loop, that's the hamster wheel,
mhm.
is not a creative place.
And then I think the next step is like to be willing to have conversations with our kids, yes, about the ones that the actual hard numbers of money, but also then to be brave enough to say, and hey, here's the story I was given around this. Here's a story, you know, my
Yeah.
family or my culture taught me around it. Here's where I'm at now. And I'll give you a great example. My son, we were driving one day and he just randomly asked me, he's like, how much money's in the world? And I try to honestly, when I don't know an answer to something, I'll say, hey, let me look it up. Or if I'm like here, even if I have an answer that feels honest to me, even if it doesn't make sense, I will share it. So he said, how much money is in the world? And I thought about it. And the answer I came with was like, I was like, it's an unknowable number.
I think it's also
Like it's
unlimited.
unlimited. That's what I
Yeah.
mean. Is like I told him, like, it's unlimited. There's an unlimited amount of money, because money is also always changing hands. This person leaves and they leave. I mean, it's also being printed and created, and it goes in sometimes it's in the form of resources, sometimes it's digital, sometimes it's in prop. I mean, there is an unlimited amount of money in the world. And so even though I never told him like, hey, here's a good mindset to have, or like, hey, but just having that kind of conversation, that little brain goes, wait a minute, if there's an unlimited amount of something, an unlimited amount of it, then I can't believe the story that there's not enough, I don't have enough, because there's an unlimited amount of it. It's like, how much oxygen can you take in? Well, you just got to breathe, you know what I mean? But when you stop breathing, that's what limits the amount of oxygen you're taking. It's not that there's not an abundance of oxygen in the air. And so those are the conversations like when you could do it in your own way, in your own framework works, but like not shutting those conversations down or thinking, oh, my kids are too little for us to talk about, these emotions around money because they are living in our homes. And so if we're feeling them, if we're trying to navigate it, they are also feeling them. And so the more we can like just bring it to the surface and talk about it and talk about what does the word rich mean? What does the word wealthy mean? What does scarcity mean? What does abundance mean? What all of those things, the more that we can make that a part of our family culture, the more that we then can change the next generation's culture and anxiety around this thing that is limitless. It's hard to, it's really hard to say that enough to be like this thing that is making me so worried. There's an unlimited amount of it, unlimited amount of it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
even that is like a challenging, I don't know, that makes it like makes my head spin. And I also hear like people being like, yeah, there might be a middle limited amount of it, but there's only $20 in my account.
Yeah, but
What do you say to that
if
person?
someone said to me, Andre, yeah, there's an unlimited amount of money, but there's only $20 in my account, right? I
Mhm.
would say, yeah, you can show me. That's a fact. There's $20 in your account. So can you accept that there's $20 in your account? And then can you also then accept there's an unlimited amount of resources in the world? And then from that place of acceptance, then say, oh, what's the next available step to me? And when I say that, I don't mean from 20 to whatever, 200,000 or 2 million, whatever all the stuff says out there online about how you can just like make it pop. No, no. Your next available step might be from 20 to 30 or what 20 to 40 because you got creative and you made calls and you reached out to people and you applied for things even though you didn't feel qualified for like those actions. So I would say that yes, there is $20 in your account, but that does not mean there's only $20 in the world. There's an unlimited amount of resources in the world, you know? And in that situation, I would also say be open to the fact that when you take those creative steps, when you don't move from a place of worry, anxiety, but you move from a place of acceptance, sometimes opportunities come to you that do not look monetary in their form but they are incredibly valuable. And so you might have $20 in your wallet, but you might be leaning into an experience or an opportunity that you have no idea how that is going to transfer into other forms. Because a lot of times that's another thing that I think we have to start being willing to talk about as families is that money has many different forms. It's not always $20. It's in the form of relationships, it's in the form of energy, it is in the form of property, it's in the form of a lot of experiences. So when you say you have $20, yes, you have $20, but your value, your overall value of your life is not contained within that. And there's an unlimited amount of money out there.
Hmm. Speaking of money,
Yeah.
so
Yeah, yeah. Speaking of $20.
yeah, speaking of $20. So last weekend we launched our community. It was so good to have some of you there with us. It was wonderful.
Yes, thank you.
And so thank you so much for those of you that showed up. It was awesome. We also got really sick right afterwards. Oh my gosh.
Nothing like humidity and illness
Yeah, I don't
together.
know what those kids brought home from day camp, but it was like,
Yeah, down on the
um,
floor. Like,
so, but in those quiet moments of reflection,
best time,
um,
man.
Audrey and I just want this community to be available to everybody.
Anybody who
And
needs it.
so we opted to lower it's so challenging to, I think, find this happy medium of being able to value yourself and what you're bringing and like accessibility. But both of us feel like, number one, we are bringing a ton of value to you guys in this community. If you come and join us and we'll engage there, I feel like it is just going to be so magical.
Yes.
And so on that note, we lowered the price to $20 a month. So it is accessible to everyone. If you need support, coaching, some movement, we
Joy.
joy. We are going to be there to support one another. It's been sweet to interact with people already. So
We'll put a link in.
please come and join us there at multiculturalfamilyhub.com/community, and you can sign up right there for the community. It is just $20 a month. You can also find it on our Instagram page. We have the link there. So come and join us, and we'll talk to you next week.
All right. See you next time. Bye.
Bye.